It was a typical morning for Mike, UPS delivery driver. He had a route to follow and a stack of packages to drop off at various houses throughout the neighborhood. He'd done this job for years, but today it was different. Today, he was delivering to the strange house at the end of Willow Street. The house was an oddity in the otherwise well-maintained neighborhood. It was old, with a faded blue paint job and an overgrown garden that obscured most of the windows. The owner, a reclusive man named Mr. Eldridge, was known for his eccentricities and had a reputation for being unfriendly. Every day for the past week, Mike had been assigned to deliver a package to Mr. Eldridge's house. What was strange was that it was always the same package, a plain cardboard box with no return address. The label bore Mr. Eldridge's name and address, but nothing more. Mike parked his delivery truck and grabbed the familiar package. He approached the front door, took a deep breath, and rang the doorbell. As he waited, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this routine. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Mr. Eldridge standing there. He was a frail man with sunken eyes and unkempt hair, dressed in a faded robe. He didn't say a word. Instead, he simply extended a trembling hand to receive the package. Mike obliged, handing it over, and then went on his way, marking another successful delivery in his records. But as the days passed, Mike couldn't help but wonder about the mysterious package. Why was he delivering the same nondescript bags every day? What could possibly be inside? On the sixth day, Mike decided to take a closer look. He discreetly swapped the package for an identical one from his truck, hoping that Mr. Eldridge wouldn't notice the difference. As he drove away, he carefully opened the original package. Inside, he found a collection of handwritten journals. Their pages were filled with incoherent ramblings, drawings of bizarre symbols, and descriptions of strange rituals. The words and images sent a shiver down Mike's spine, and he couldn't make sense of any of it. He decided to research Mr. Eldridge and the history of the house. What he uncovered was deeply unsettling. The house had been the site of numerous disappearances over the years, all of them unsolved. Rumors on the neighborhood suggested that Mr. Eldridge was involved in occult practices, and that the house was cursed. As Mike continued to dig, he learned that Mr. Eldridge had once been a respected professor of anthropology before his descent into madness. His research had taken a dark turn, focusing on forbidden knowledge and rituals that promise power and immortality. With each passing day, Mike's fear and curiosity grew. He couldn't resist reading more of the journals, despite the overwhelming dread that washed over him with every page turned. The rituals described within were horrific, involving sacrifices and pacts with otherworldly beings. One evening, after another delivery to the mysterious house, Mr. Eldridge caught Mike's eye. He seemed to sense that something was amiss. As their gazes locked, Mike felt a surge of terror unlike anything he had ever experienced. That night, as Mike lay in bed, He heard strange noises outside his window. When he peered out, he saw Mr. Eldridge standing in his yard, illuminated by the pale light of the moon. The old man was chanting in a language Mike couldn't understand, holding the package tightly in his hands. Panicked, Mike called the police. By the time they arrived at Mr. Eldridge's house, it was too late. They found the old man dead, surrounded by the journals and strange symbols. The investigation that followed uncovered a horrifying truth. Mr. Eldridge had been using the UPS deliveries as a cover for his dark rituals. The package had contained one of his most prized possessions, a cuss artifact that connected him to a malevolent force. Mike quit his job after that night, haunted by the knowledge of what he had unwittingly been a part of. The neighborhood returned to peace, but the memory of the strange deliveries and the horrors they concealed would stay with Mike forever. Jake had been a pizza delivery guy for several years, and he thought he had seen it all. Wild parties, bizarre requests, and even the occasional prank call were all part of the job. But nothing could have prepared him for what he would encounter on that fateful night. It was a chilly autumn evening, and the streets were quiet. Jake received an order for a large pepperoni pizza with extra cheese and a side of garlic knots. He hopped into his trusty delivery car, a worn-out sedan with a cracked windshield, and headed to the address provided. The delivery was bound for a remote part of town, an area he had seldom visited. As he drove deeper into the darkness, the street lights grew scarcer, and the houses became few and far between. The address led him to a dilapidated house nestled at the end of a long, winding driveway. The house appeared abandoned, its windows boarded up, and its paint peeling. Jake hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether he should even attempt the delivery. But he couldn't ignore the fact that this was a paying customer, and he needed the tip. Clutching the pizza box tightly, Jake made his way up the creaky front porch and rang the doorbell. He waited, his breath visible in the cold night air, and heard nothing but the eerie silence. Just when he was about to leave, the door slowly swung open, revealing a dimly lit interior.
Hello?
Jake called out, his voice quivering. Pizza delivery. No response. Jake cautiously stepped inside, the smell of decay and mustiness hitting him like a brick wall. The house seemed to be frozen in time, with dusty, cobweb-covered furniture and peeling wallpaper that hinted at a once vibrant past. He followed a dim corridor into what appeared to be the living room. There, sitting at an old, tattered dining table, was a woman. She looked to be in her 40s, with long, unkempt hair and sunken eyes that appeared as if they hadn't slept in years. She was wearing a tattered dress, and her bony hands were trembling as she reached for the pizza. "Here's your order, ma'am," Jake stammered, setting the pizza box down. He noticed that the woman's gaze was fixed on something beyond him, something in the shadows. As he turned to leave, he heard a faint whisper.
"Stop screaming."
Startled, Jake turned back to the woman. "Ma'am, did you say something?" But she remained silent, her eyes locked on the darkness. Jake felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized that the whisper had come from somewhere deeper within the house. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the flickering candles on the table. The woman's face contorted into a look of terror as she glanced towards the hallway. Jake felt a growing sense of dread. "Please," the woman muttered, her voice trembling.
Come back alive.
Before Jake could react, he heard a series of footsteps echoing from the corridor. They were slow, deliberate, and seemed to be coming closer. Panic surged through him, and he bolted towards the front door, leaving the pizza behind. Outside, he could hear the footsteps pursuing him, growing louder with each passing moment. He sprinted back to his car, fumbled with his keys, and jumped inside, speeding away from the haunted house. As he drove through the darkness, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he had narrowly escaped something unspeakable. He glanced in his rearview mirror but saw nothing. No one was following him. When he returned to the pizza place, he realized he had left his phone behind in the abandoned house. Despite the strangeness of the situation, he couldn't bring himself to return to that place. It was a night he would never forget, a night when he encountered something beyond explanation in the depths of the darkness. And as he continued his deliveries, he couldn't help but wonder about the woman and what horrors might have befallen her in that forsaken house. Karen had worked at the local post office for over a decade, but nothing could have prepared her for what she would discover one fateful evening. It was a quiet night, and Karen was sorting through the latest batch of packages that had arrived at the small postal facility. She'd always prided herself on her attention to detail, ensuring that each package was labeled correctly and ready for its journey to its destination. But as she opened one particular package, a foul odor hit her, and she recoiled in horror. Inside the box, she found a dismembered human hand, neatly wrapped in plastic. Her heart raced, and panic set in. She immediately called her supervisor, Mark, over to her station. He was as shocked as she was, and didn't waste a moment contacting the authorities. The police arrived promptly, and an investigation began. They examined the package, took photographs, and collected evidence. The address on the backs led them to a dilapidated house at the edge of town. It was clear that this was no ordinary package. It was the start of something sinister. As the night wore on, more terrifying discoveries were made. 2 additional packages, both containing body parts, were found among the outgoing parcels. The police were baffled. How had these gruesome packages ended up at the post office? And where were they coming from? News of the gruesome findings spread quickly throughout the small town. Panic and fear gripped the community as rumors and speculation swirled. The townspeople became paranoid, suspecting one another of being involved in the horrifying scheme. Meanwhile, Karen couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. She had handled those packages, touched the pieces of a dismembered corpse. The thought haunted her, and she couldn't sleep. She became obsessed with finding answers, convinced that the key to unraveling the mystery was hidden within the post office. One night, unable to resist her curiosity, Karen decided to stay late at the post office to investigate further. She knew she was taking a huge risk, but she needed to know the truth. As she combed through the records and examined surveillance footage, she discovered a disturbing pattern. All of the gruesome packages had one thing in common: they had been shipped through a private courier service known for its secrecy. The sender's name was always listed as John Doe, with a different address each time. Karen couldn't contain her shock. It seemed that someone was using the postal service to transport human body parts, and the true sender was cloaked in anonymity. Determined to expose the truth, Karen began reaching out to recipients of packages from John Doe. She discovered that many of them had been lured into shady deals on the dark web, involving the purchase and sale of illegal organs. The body parts were sent to unwitting buyers, hidden within legitimate packages. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Karen returned to the police with her findings. Together, they launched a sting operation to track down the sender behind John Doe. In the end, they apprehended a ruthless black market organ trafficker who had been using the postal service as a front for his gruesome trade. The discovery shocked the town, but also brought a sense of relief that the nightmare was finally over. Are you scared after this? Let me know what scary things you have encountered in the past. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Click on the videos on the screen for more. Thank you.